So let's talk about a firm. What is a firm? In microeconomics, we talk about firm theory. Here we're just going to talk about it in general in terms of the institution. So businesses are private producing units in our society. Businesses in the U.S. decide what to produce, how much to produce, and for whom to produce it. But you might wait a minute and say, hey, wait a minute. The customer decides. If the customer buys it, they buy it. If they don't, they don't. Well, that actually kind of goes to the chaos of capitalism. There's no central planning in capitalism. So there's no one person taking into account the total demand for a good and the total supply for a good. It's done by a lot of trial and error. Now, that trial and error actually works out to be a pretty efficient process for most goods, but it's still trial and error. So think about how our system works. A business decides, I think I will supply widgets. How many should I supply? I think I'll supply 100. What price should I charge? I think I'll charge $10 a piece. Now, if somebody decides they want that widget and they're willing to pay $10 a piece for that widget, then that business sells the widget. If everyone says, those widgets are horrible, I don't want those, for any price, the company goes out of business. If everybody says, wait a minute, those are wonderful, we'd pay 10 times the price for it, the company sells out very quickly and they have to produce more and they'll end up raising their price. Or if they only sell half as many as they want, they might end up lowering their price. But essentially, the business makes the offer, makes its best guess as to what the offer should be, what product should be, who it should be marketed to, and how much it should cost, and how much they should produce. And then the market decides whether or not their decision was correct or not. Businesses produce what they believe they will sell and make a profit, of course. All right. One of the main motivating factors behind a business is profit. Now, it's not exactly their objective depending on the size of the business and the type of business. So, for example, a sole proprietor, which is a person that the person is the business, and we'll talk about the different types of businesses in a minute. Profit could definitely be considered one of their objectives. But in a major corporation like, say, Microsoft, profit actually isn't the main objective. The main objective is maximizing shareholder wealth, which may or may not mean maximizing profit. By channeling desire to make a profit for general good of society, U.S. economy allows the invisible hand to work. All right, so basically let's decompose this. Company wants to make profit. You say, well, yeah, the company's selfish. Well, yeah, good. They want to make a profit. How do they make a profit? They sell something that people want and or need. Well, if we're providing stuff that people want and or need, well, then we're making those people better off. So, by going after my own self-interest as a business person, trying to make profit, I'm actually doing society good. That's the idea behind the invisible hand, which admittedly doesn't always work, and it doesn't work for every good, but it works for many, many of them. So although businesses decide what to produce, they are guided by consumer sovereignty. Now, what the heck? Well, the consumer sovereignty is simple. You don't have to buy it. If somebody produces stupid widgets, then, well, you don't buy those stupid widgets. All right? All right, so let's take a look. We're going to talk about three main forms of businesses: a sole proprietorship, a corporation, and a partnership. And you can see most businesses in terms of number of businesses, not in terms of the size of the business, but in terms of the number of the businesses, are sole proprietorships. Main reason is it's very easy to start a sole proprietorship. All right, for example, you may have done this when you were a little kid. You started a lemonade stand. Set up a little lemonade stand. You said you're going to sell lemonade, 50 cents a glass. Right? Well, that's a sole proprietorship. Now, we probably aren't counting that particular one in this number, but it's still, technically, it is a sole proprietorship. Corporations, there's legal steps that need to be taken to form them. There's no legal steps that need to be taken to form a sole proprietorship. Partnerships, there may be legal steps that needed to be performed to form of partnership. And partnerships, it's a little ambiguous what we mean. Generally, it could mean a sole proprietorship type business where you have more than one proprietor, or it could be something like a corporation where you have only a few, very limited number of shareholders. Now, if we look at this by receipts, so a little difference by size, you see sole proprietorships are tiny. Partnerships are tiny, and almost everything else is corporation. And there's a real good reason for wanting things to be in terms of a corporation. So, let's define these guys a little bit. So first of all, a proprietorship. The key thing that says about a proprietorship is that you are severely liable for all the losses of that company. So there's no limit to your liability. So if you're a sole proprietorship, let's say you are a physician and you get sued for malpractice. Well, they can come after your personal assets. You're liable for all of that. Right? So in a sole proprietorship, you are the business. It doesn't last beyond you. When you die, it dies, and everything that you have is a part of the business. So if we look at some advantages, almost no bureaucratic hassle. You don't have to fill out forms or anything like that to get it set up. You have complete control by the owner. The owner is the business. So if you decide to go to bed tonight, your business goes to bed tonight. Disadvantages. You have very limited ability to get funds. So, for example, about the only way you can get financing for this is to either borrow money or be gifted money. And, of course, unlimited personal liability. And that unlimited personal liability basically makes it very difficult for you to, say, sell shares in your company. Right? In fact, there are no shares of your company because you haven't set that up legally. A partnership. Partnership, well, there could be two different ways of thinking about a partnership. A partnership can either be more of a proprietorship, where there's no limit to personal liability, and so it's basically a sole proprietorship where you have more than one owner. All right, so you have two brothers decide to get together and start a business. All right, or two sisters, or brother and sister, or just a group of people decide to get together and start a business. But the problems with this are, and you have more ability to get funds because you have more people involved. The problem is you still have unlimited liability. Now, there's a new kind of, well, it's not really new. It's been around for about almost 20 years, called a limited liability partnership or a limited liability company, which is kind of something in between a partnership and a corporation. We're not going to talk about it too much, but basically you can think about it as a partnership that has the ability to limit a person's personal liability. Now finally we get down here to corporation. Corporations are an entity in and of themselves. So the company is like a person. All right, it even has rights. In fact, if you'll remember not too long ago, the Supreme Court said that corporations actually have some free speech rights in terms of donating to campaigns and such. And the advantage of this is you get you get limited personal liability. So your liability in the company is limited to the amount you invest. Now this is really, really important because think about it. What happens if you decide to invest in Ford Motor Company? All right, you like cars, you like Fords. Not sure why you like Fords, but you like Fords and you decide to invest. I guess it was the Mustang. You really like the Mustang, and so you decided you're going to invest in Ford. All right, and I don't know if any of you remember this or not or know about this, but Ford had a major product liability suit brought against it in something called the Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto had this nasty habit of exploding whenever it got hit in the rear. Basically, the way they designed the gas tank made it prone to leaking when it got a rear-end collision, which caused a fire hazard, and basically it blew up whenever you hit it in the back. Well, okay, so that really wasn't the problem. I mean, everybody makes design mistakes. You know, you go in, you correct it, you pay for damages that happened, you know. No, you know, they could have fixed that, but what was really bad about that case, really bad about that case, is they found a little document that did a cost-benefit analysis. Which is cheaper, settling the cases that come against them because their car blows up, or fixing the problem? And they decided that settling the court cases was cheaper than fixing the problem. All right? And so instead of having a recall, fixing the problem and addressing it properly, they decided just to, well, not worry about it. Ended up in a big class action lawsuit. And Ford ended up paying a lot of money. Okay, so the court found this document that said, oh, settling the lawsuits is cheaper than fixing it, and basically said, no, we're going to make it way more expensive for you to settle these cases than it would have been to fix it. And so there were a ton of punitive damages on top of that. I think there was also some criminal fines that were involved in it as well. But let's say there was no limit to liability. Well, then those millions of dollars, and it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars that this settlement goes. If you owned Ford stock at that time, they could come after you personally for that money, all right, and grab not just the money that you've invested in Ford, all right, that you've put up for risk, right, because you invested in the company, but money that you hadn't invested. So if you think about it, if I decide to buy, $100 worth of shares in Toyota, and Toyota has a problem with its cars not stopping, they just accelerate out of control, and there's a huge product liability suit, and then all of a sudden, because I own $100 worth of stock in Toyota, they can come take my house. I don't want to buy stock in Toyota. So this limited liability is hugely important for fostering economic growth, because what it allows to do is it allows people to pool their resources, huge numbers of people to pool their resources. And not all of those people can know everything about this company and have control over this company such that they're willing to risk their house over it or their personal assets over it. So the corporation is probably one of the most important institutions we have for economic growth. All right, there's a ton of disadvantages, lots of legal hassles. Double taxation is a big time, because you have corporate taxes and then dividends get transferred to the owners, who they then have to pay taxes on those dividends because it's income to them. There's lots of monitoring problems, lots of stuff, but the big thing comes down to this no personal liability. All right, your liability is limited to what you invest. All right, businesses. So e-commerce and digital economy. Okay, so we've got a bunch of other stuff. I want to go kind of quickly through this. There's business-to-business type transactions where businesses serve other businesses. Businesses to customers. So say, like, for example, Amazon.com does both of this. First, it provides a place for businesses to sell their goods, so it's providing services to other businesses, and it's also selling goods directly to the public, so it's providing businesses to customers. There's customer to business, individuals offering goods and services to firms online. For example, I've done a little bit of consulting work in my career, all right, where I'm an individual and I'm providing some service to a business. And then consumer to consumer. Okay, there's, for example, eBay. eBay provides business to consumers. It provides them a place to sell their stuff and a market where consumers can sell to consumers. So one of the things that's great about this e-commerce stuff is it basically makes the marketplace smaller, in that it makes New York City much closer to LA, much closer to River Falls, Wisconsin.